Today we're doing something just a little bit different, as you know. We're not having church service in terms of actually gathering in the church building, and that's something that I think we will all grow to appreciate as we move through this whole experience together. But today we're looking at the idea of unleashing your spiritual power. And I think it's really an important subject at this moment in our history, because we are confronted with something that's really unprecedented. We've never done anything like this. I've been doing ministry for over 40 years, and never have we ever closed our church based on the fear of spreading some disease, in this case the coronavirus. So this is new territory for all of us. We're learning as we go. But it's good for us to get back to our spiritual principles, or not necessarily get back to them, but just kind of look at them again and see how they might apply in a situation like this. So I'll be right up front in saying that standing in front of a camera and speaking, trying to imagine that I'm talking to living people, is a little bit challenging. We do record a video every Sunday, but I have all of you out there in the audience listening, or at least I presume you're listening, and not being able to have any interaction here is a little bit challenging. But I'll get used to it. It just takes a little bit of time to stand in front of a camera and talk as if you're talking to a group of people. So I'll get the hang of this, I'm sure. So bear with me as we go. I also want to say that if anybody has any ideas on how to keep our community connected through this whole period that we go through here, let me know what those are. Call the office. The office is open. Call me at home or email me with your ideas, because community is very important to sustain at a time like this. We all want to know that we're rooting for each other, that we're there in any way we can be at any time. And I want you to know that your church is here, and we want to keep this community going. It's I think what we will do when all is said and done is we will have a deeper appreciation for that dynamic of coming together in a place, and to focus on, our spiritual interests, and to get ideas on how to improve on that and make that better. So I think we'll just kind of take this easily, and I'm not going to promise any kind of spiritual magical cure or anything through this. In fact, I want to take a very down-to-earth, a very grounded approach to this situation that we're in. It's often in times like these that our spiritual ideas become the clearest. And that's because we often live at a very, very surface level of life. Our attention span is not all that long when we think in terms of social media. Now that's kind of unfortunate, because there's so much in life that happens, and it's a long-term thing, and we want to be there for the long haul. But we live in a very surface time, a very surface environment where our focus is there. And it's not only true there, but when we just do something like go to the grocery store. We're out of carrots today, so we run up to the nearest grocery store and buy a bag of carrots. We don't give any thought to that whatsoever. We take it for granted because it's so accessible. And that's not a bad thing, but we forget that there is more to life, or it's deeper than we are used to. And so when this routine, this thinking is upset somewhat, it's a big crisis, and it really throws us off. So the world that we thought was stable, we're seeing is pretty fragile. And so we're not quite so sure that, this outer part of us is the real. And that's why it's important to take an opportunity like this to really evaluate, who we are, and what this whole spiritual thing is about. It's not a sales job on spiritual principles. It is the reality. There's two sides to us. There is a physical side, the body, and our circumstances, and that's where our attention is most of the time. And that's understandable because we are taking care of the body. We're living in an environment. And so we associate so much of what we think and say and do, and the plans that we make, they're all environmentally oriented, or most of them are. And so the spiritual thing is something we maybe carry into this way of thinking. I'm a physical being with a soul, with a spiritual dimension. But and most of our prayers, most of our thinking is centered around how do we apply spiritual principles to the body, to the bodily needs? How do we solve our problems, our bodily problems, by applying spiritual principles? So that's good and that's important, and we call that, practical. That's a practical aspect of the spiritual teachings, the Christian teachings, whatever kinds of teachings there are. We're interested in solving our earthly problems, solving our bodily problems. But then we get into something like we're into right now, and we see how much we have grown to depend on keeping the world as it has always been, so we can get up in the morning and we don't even think about going to the grocery store and picking up food or whatever we're going to buy. We don't think at all about going out in public. There's no concern about doing that. So now we're thinking about that's not a thing we should do. That's why we're doing this presentation in this way. And it's a practical step to take. But what we think of as reality is really a pretty thin veneer, and we live there quite a bit. So it's important for us to deal with that and to look at the spiritual aspect of how to deal with it without being airy-fairy, without just saying, no, God's in charge and everything's okay, because that's usually what the first reaction is there's several phases we go through on a situation like this, on any so-called crisis in our life. And the first stage often is simply denial. And we can deny that from a spiritual perspective, which sounds pretty strange. But we can say, oh, there's this appearance out there, everybody's going crazy, but God's in charge and God will see us through and we have no worries. Well, that may work as long as the problem is very short term. And it usually does. It's kind of a feel-good response. It'll go away. It's not something I need to worry about or can be concerned about. And of course, I'm not saying that we need to worry. But we actually move into a position of power when we acknowledge the problem. When we say, yes, there is a problem here and I need to do something about it. I need to think differently about it. And it's as I begin to do this, say I have this problem, or here we are confronted with this issue, what do we do about it? And that's when we start thinking about who we are from a spiritual perspective. It is my body, it is my environment, but it is not me as a spiritual being that's involved in this. But it is from that point of view that I want to address this problem, that I want to take the action that's necessary to get to the next phase, to get to the next step. So we gain a perspective. we're kind of knocked off our feet for a while. Then we say, okay, something knocked me off my feet. I do have a situation to look at here. So I look at it and I say, this is a thing. This is something that's in my life right now. And it's something that I need to deal with. So we shift our center of power away from the body and circumstances, and we begin to focus on our spiritual core. Sometimes when you don't know what to do in life, you're backed up against the wall. That's when your eyes open, your spiritual eyes open. And it's not that we have to be backed up against the wall for that to happen, but it just happens that's often what does happen, is we have to have some type of a crisis or a problem in order to move into the deeper level. Maybe it's because we don't see a solution on the more surface level. And so we turn to God, or we turn to prayer. We turn to the unseen. I don't know the answer, but there's something here that does. And that's the beginning of actually opening ourselves to our center of power. We're not looking up to the sky. We're not looking for answers to come outside of ourselves. But from this place of peace and power, we can then do whatever we're called upon to do. And we can do it from a place of peace and power. And isn't that really the best way to approach any problem? Is we're not in denial of the problem. We're not in denial of the appearance. But the spiritual dimension is always with us. We live and move and have our being in it. And it's when our surface life is upset that we find that stabilizing force, that power. The fact that we don't see a physical solution or an answer helps us turn to that place of peace and quiet within our own being. If you have experienced some upset over this current situation, you can prove to yourself that if you follow that fear, if you just follow that thinking train that you get on, you'll find that it doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't do anything but just perpetuate your bad feelings. And what we tend to do when we're feeling that way is we tend to look for confirmation that we're justified in doing that. And on the other side of that is the spiritual approach, or the other approach that says there's really no problem here. Don't worry about it. Just God's in charge. Everything's okay. That's not always the best message either. It is true. It is a true statement. But from an emotional point of view, we want something we can grab onto. An idea that allows us to take constructive action. We can be proactive, as they say. And we want to do that. But it's sometimes it takes a while to get to that place where we say and know from the very depths of our being that God truly is in charge and that everything is in divine order. We go through a transition where we filter down through all of the things we've trusted in, every place we have put our trust. We filter down to that place in us where we feel power and strength. And we know everything is in divine order, not just words that we're saying. We actually know this. I think that's what Jesus was talking about when he said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." The truth is, we are already free. I say this all the time. We desire greater freedom because at the soul level, we are already free. So we exist so often on the surface level of life, and we are shaken by events that like we're seeing right now. Shaken to come down into what is real. What is solid in us? What is the spiritual thing really all about? Because we look out and we see panic buying, we see businesses closing, we see we're told to stay inside, we're given all these warnings about, wash your hands and all of that. And I think that's good advice. I think we need to follow that type of thing. But that can reinforce our fear. And what we want to do is get to the place where we don't respond to that kind of thing. We'll still wash our hands, we'll still take the precautions. But we're not doing it out of fear, we're doing it from a place of power. I've talked several times about the issue of quality of life. And where is our quality of life? Where is that happening? It's in our thoughts and our emotions. When those get out of control, you turn on the news and you watch how horrible this virus is spreading, how so many people are infected and this and that. We don't necessarily think of the facts. We lose control emotionally and we fear. It looks like the end is near. And hopefully the end of our fear is near, because we are acknowledging, okay, yes, this is all going on, but there's a different way to approach it, a different way to experience it. And I am determined to experience that way, to know what that is and how to deal with it from the highest perspective. So we say, okay, this thing is here and it's time to take action. And we've taken a major step by simply acknowledging the fact that there is a situation and it's time to deal with it. That's pretty empowering when you think about it. It's not admitting negativity. It's looking at life that is transpiring in front of our eyes and saying, okay, here's what it is. The whole idea of denial, we equate that with the ostrich sticking his head in the sand. Well, I've never seen an ostrich stick his head in the sand, but the imagery is that if you stick your head in the sand, you don't see anything going on around you, and so you're safe somehow. You probably have seen the little kid that hides his head behind the couch and thinks you can't see the rest of his body, thinks he's hiding from you. And that's a pretty good metaphor, because we can spiritually stick our heads in the sand and try to avoid, what's really going on in front of us. But we don't want to do that. This whole life thing, this whole bodily thing is about learning how to be a spiritual being expressing through a body. And that much of our identity is centered on the body, and we understand why that is, because we're putting so much attention on taking care of it. The whole threat or the scare, whatever's going on now, that's entirely bodily oriented. Has nothing to do with the soul. But you are a soul occupying a body, and you want to keep this body running healthy. You want to keep it healthy. You want to keep it running well. And so we want to take care of it. We want to take whatever measures are needed to do that. And we got to think of other people as well. We want to keep a broader sense of it. It's kind of interesting here, because we're in a process sort of isolating ourselves from one another. But it is a time when we think of other people. Why are we isolating ourselves? We're doing that for our own protection, but we're doing it for the protection of others. And that's why we have suspended church services for this time. And we'll keep everybody informed about how long that's going to last. I hope it doesn't last very long, but we will get through this. We'll make it through and do whatever we need to do to get to the other side. And like I said, if anybody has any suggestions on how we can reach out to people more in better ways, I do plan on creating some healing meditations and things that we'll make available to all of you online, so you can just sit down, relax, and kind of chill out from all of whatever's going on in your life right now in a positive way. This time will pass. This is not the end of the world. There have been so many things that have come up in our lives, we thought was, that were pretty dangerous, and they have passed. We're here. We made it to this point. And who would have ever thought we'd be here doing this? But here we are, and we're doing it. And we're going to do it from our place of power, our center of power. That's what the whole spiritual thing teaches us. So from the spiritual perspective, our primary interest is to tap into the bedrock of fearlessness. That is, our true essence is not subject to the challenges of the body and environment. We have a body and we have an environment, but we are much more than this. The closer we get to this true center of power, the more effective we are in dealing with the surface things in life. So that's absolutely true. We operate from our center of power, from a place of power. And now more than any other time is this absolutely essential. And I'm sure that most of you that are watching this and listening to this have come to that understanding that I'm just telling you what you already know. But we really can't tell each other this enough. We all need to be reminded from time to time that things are working out, that we are passing through this valley, but we will come again into the broader view of sunshine and daylight and just the freedom from having to be concerned about something that we're looking at right now. Because you and I are like the cutting edge of God expressing in and as us. That we are the bringers of God light into this world. And it's up to us, how bright we want that light to shine in our own experience, in our own world. God is willing, the Spirit is willing, as the Bible says, but the flesh is sometimes weak. So we want to not just say things because they feel good or because we've learned these things. We want to say them because we know they are true. We're coming from our place of power. And that's what your life responds to. It responds to your knowing, not your head words, not the words that are going through your head or the words that come off your lips. But it comes from an inner groundedness, an inner knowing that things are working out, that your life is in divine order, that this too shall pass. We'll move through this time of uncertainty and we'll come out stronger and even more deeply rooted in our spiritual values. Don't you believe this? I know you do. I do. That every time we have a challenge, what is that challenge? We're pushed up against our belief system. We've come up against something that looks like it's larger than what our faith is capable of handling. And that's probably true. And so the thing that we do is we look at that and we say, should I fear this or should I expand my awareness of who and what I am? Is there something more to me that needs to come out at this moment? And that's the constructive question to ask. How can I express more of myself? And I can tell that I'm not expressing all that I need to express by how I feel. If I feel afraid, that's not who or what I am. So I open myself to expressing myself at a greater level. What's blocking me from experience peace right now? Is it the circumstance? Is it, the news that I'm reading? Is it the fears that people are expressing? Is that what is defining me? And if it is, then I can say, well, that's where I've had my faith. That's been my faith level. As long as I look out at the world and everybody's behaving normally and everything's okay, I'll be safe and know that God's in charge and all of that. But when I look out and see that nothing's the same, that everything has been challenged, then I say, okay, it's time for me then to expand a little further, to see what else is within me. How can I deal with this? Not necessarily on a physical level, although I'll carry that into the physical level. But how can I first come to know my strength? What is it I'm hanging on to? What picture do I hold that is causing me to quiver in my boots? What is this image of myself that I carry that's smaller than this apparent problem that's outside? And I begin to look at myself from that perspective. And I begin to open myself to new ideas, to new ways of experiencing life. So we're going through these things, we're going through these changes, and maybe we all first denied the problem. We all said it's just people panicking. People panic and they do crazy things, which is absolutely true. I think it's true that one of the epidemics that we need to get under control is fear. People are responding to this thing as if it's the end of the world, and it's not. So we don't want to deny the problem, but we want to be able to move to that place in ourselves. And we do that place of strength within ourselves. And we do this first by acknowledging, here's this problem. I've never seen anything like this before. Is it going to be bigger than me, or is there something in me that needs to come out now? So you acknowledge the problem. First we deny it, then we acknowledge it. And that's when we start to gain perspective and ask the questions. What is it in me that feels smaller than this? And you don't dwell necessarily on what it is that feels smaller. You dwell on the fact that something in me does. And that something is not really who I am. I'm much more than this. So we gain perspective. We gain our spiritual memory, let's say that. So from there we shift to our center of power. We shift away from the body mentality and from the circumstantial evidence that's out there saying, you need to worry, you need to fear this thing. You shift from that external surface self to more of a center of power. And you're able then to look at this experience from a totally different place. So from this place of peace and power, we then do whatever we're called upon to do. And as I have said often, wouldn't you rather have someone who feels at peace and who feels like, and they are coming from their center of power, when you're involved in some level of crisis? Wouldn't you rather have that type of person involved than the type of person who is reacting in fear and just saying, oh, it's too bad what happened to you and there's nothing we can do, that's just the way it is and all? We want to come from that place of power, and so we are learning to do this, and there's not much of a better way to do it than to face a challenge, to have a challenge pop up in our life that we don't know how to handle. So this is how we unleash our spiritual power. Let's use this opportunity to look at ourselves in a very in-depth kind of way and be willing to redefine ourselves in ways that that actually work and that make our spiritual life, our spiritual understanding, a lot more meaningful. So thank you for watching this, and we'll continue creating these. I will probably do some shorter ones through the week just to let you know that we're still here and give some insights on any things that you might be dealing with. And also, if you have some suggestions on videos I might want to make, let me know, because this is an unusual time and we're having to deal with it in ways that we probably never even thought about. So thanks for watching.
You've been watching a talk presented by Reverend Doug Bottorff at Independent Unity here in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today, as well as those of you who joined us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to share it with those you think who might benefit from this message. If this brought value to your life, please consider donating to us on PayPal at paypal.com/us/fundraiser/charity/1974724. Thanks again for watching.